Super League spotlight shining so bright. Interviews and news, come join the hype.
So hello and welcome to episode 4 now of the Super League Spotlight. We are joined today by General Manager of the SLBw, Emily Clarke. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi guys, it's great to be here.
So let's just dive straight in and let's talk a little bit about your background in basketball, because you've been involved in basketball for a good chunk of time now.
A very long time, yes. I had a bit of a shock a few weeks ago when I said to some national team kids that I'd been team managing since 2009 and they were born in 2010. I was just a little bit mortified, but yeah. So I got into basketball because way back when I was 11, this is how far back it goes, my teacher, they kind of looked you up and down back then and decided what you were best suited for, rather than now where young people get to try lots of different activities in order to find their way forward. And Mr. Potter looked me up and down and I was about 5'5". Said, you need to go to basketball. So, okay. So off I went, captained my first team, got to university, ran my club at university, went on a stats course with Ian Richards at Mansfield Express, it was then, and came out as his club secretary. And yeah, crazy. I had some time at Basketball England, working in the National League. Came out of there, went to Birmingham Bullets, worked with several franchises over the period of about 10 years. And then my friend Simon Fisher was taking on the national team under 16 England boys and asked me if I'd team manage, and 10 European Championships later finally retired from that. So yeah, so it's been the best thing. It's almost addictive. It's something that you can't, once you're in, you can't really shake it off. And it's a pleasure to have spent so much time giving back as well, and not just working within the sport, but actually giving back to the young people. And it's great now to see some of the kids that I team managed sort of knocking around the league, playing national team at senior level, making me feel old. So yeah, it's been a crazy almost 30 years, you'd probably say. So yeah, busy.
So yeah, extensive experience. You talk about team managing. You hear that kind of term a lot with obviously, but what is involved in that?
Well, contrary to what a head coach thinks, the team manager is in charge when you go away to a European Championships. It's all about, I mean, when they're, sort of 16, it's almost being, I wouldn't say a mother figure, because some teams have, guys that are with them or whatever, but there's very much a niche where my knowledge of basketball is pretty good, especially because of officiating and things like that. But I always said I would never have anything to do with the coaching or the selections or anything. I would always work with the kids that the coach wanted. So the role is very much just about supporting the staff and the players. And then it's all the things you don't see, everything that's outside the lines, basically. Sleep patterns, food patterns, scheduling, just general welfare. Yeah, all sorts, sitting in hospitals, in Sarajevo, you name it. It's all sorts, but it's very, very rewarding and often under recognized as well.
Yeah, as I say, you hear about a team manager a lot, but actually you don't understand what goes on behind the scenes to make that happen. Yeah.
They're I'm not saying this just because I was one. I respect all of them now. They're kind of a linchpin that kind of keeps the communication going between the players and the staff, if you like. So they're not present unless you've done your bit for the staff to then work with them. So it's all very much being a sort of the link in the chain, if you like.
Was I right in thinking you were involved in Birmingham the Commonwealth Games 2022?
I was, yeah. I just did 3 weeks with them as athlete service director. So it was we kind of got there and there was nothing there. So I don't know if you went or you saw it on TV, but all the structure was built on wasteland.
Yeah.
So I kind of got there on my first day. So I lived in a hotel in Birmingham for 19 nights. And I got there on the first morning and I got given a hard hat. And I thought, oh no, what have I let myself in for? There was nothing there. Things were literally going up around you. And it was when we had the 40-degree heat. So our vinyl tent, you can imagine, it was a real treat to work in there. But it was sort of setting up the processes to help the athletes in the background. So I looked after all the bit that wasn't on the TV. So the restrooms, the cafes, the locker rooms, the lockers that we had in for the wheelchair basketball teams to store their competition chairs and things like that. So yeah, it was a fantastic experience, and the fact that England did so well as well, and being right there sort of courtside, it was fantastic.
Scotland did not too bad as well.
No, not at all. They were great. Do you know the thing it taught me the most was though we get so into the I call it 5x5 now after 3x3, but it's not. We look at how those teams are formed, but it was really interesting for me as a basketball person to see the different statures and builds and combinations of players that were there for the teams. And there was a couple of the volunteers, oh, look how tall they are, aren't they? And I was like, no, well, no, that's kind of our world. You know, we're in basketball anyway. So, you know, you don't really notice how tall they are after 30 years. But yeah, there was sort of teams that had gone small and fast and teams that had gone bigs and smalls. And yeah, England just seemed to get it right with everyone being very similar and athletic.
And now we've got 2026 coming up now in Glasgow confirmed.
We have, yeah.
That's exciting. That's kind of close to us again.
Yeah, it's always good when things are sort of within range. I did a crazy trip to the Olympics in the summer. I went there and back in 30 hours and saw a couple of games in Lille, but it just made it within sort of shooting distance when it's that close by. It's a shame not to go. So I'm hoping some of our SLBw fans will be able to get to Glasgow.
I'm sure they will. Now, we've talked about your experience and your extensive experience. Tell us a little bit about your role with the SLBw.
Okay, so there wasn't a staff member with what is now the SLBw until I started, and it's very much a supportive role for the clubs, sort of a guidance role. So the governance of the club is such that they govern themselves, if you like. So we have a separate license to the men, so we're not connected other than the clubs have women's teams as well. So we take a lot of guidance from how they operate, but our women's clubs own the operating rules of the SLBw. And I've sort of, because my role was brand new, I've sort of morphed it into being supportive to the clubs to help them to get where they want to go. We've just started, I'm on tour at the moment, so we've just started I'm going to a home game for every team before Christmas, so that we're able to have an overview, because I don't believe in sitting in ivory towers and telling people what's right and wrong. It's very much for what feeling do you get when you're there, how can we help, and are the things that I know there's examples of good practice elsewhere that we could bring in for them. So yeah, it's growing all the time. I mean, it's 18 months in now, and very much sort of put myself out there as being there for the clubs if they want any support or experience. There's a great group of people out there doing things in women's basketball, so it's a pleasure to work alongside them.
I mean, That's is an open sort of ended question, and we put out to social media and stuff. What do people want to know? And I guess some of the questions we might have, there might not actually be answers to. And I guess because that's to do with your remit and the way you're growing it. And it's interesting to hear you're getting out to a game, because the game day experience, Mark and I were talking about this before, obviously, we came on to this pod, and just about how it is different at every club. And you were saying how, Durham had the coaching clinics beforehand, Caledonia with their facilities, London going from the copper box back to Barking Abbey, and I think it's almost positive, the negatives, as in people are picking up on the negatives because they want more. So I guess one of the questions that I had was like, what are the aims, or like, if we're talking in like business speak, like what would be the KPIs for you from like the start of the season to the end? Where would you be like, this is where we want to be? I guess within that advisory role, that's hard because you're obviously maybe taking more of the club lead. But for you, what do you see as success by the end of this 2024-2025 season?
We have reviewed, since I started, we've reviewed the minimum standards, and so one of the reasons I say that we're supporting clubs is that we're wanting them to reach the minimum standards. So there's long-term goals. I mean, obviously there's the aspiration of competing with the likes of the WNBA, but at the same time you've got to be realistic about where we are and where we want to get to. So I think what we're probably looking for this season is a more comparison across the clubs, so there's not so much disparity. So we're not sort of taking a stab at the standings in September and still being right by April. We're looking for teams to be striving to achieve things either through better pathways, better game day presentations, growing their crowds, working in partnership with the men's clubs. I'm very aware of the different dynamics that there are with the non-linked clubs. So it's supporting them to be able to have aspirations that are comparable with the men's clubs as well. So I think what we'd be looking for is a more comparable approach to the league, so that moving forward we can grow together. So it's just sort of sharing the examples of good practice and making them work as a unit rather than being separate franchises. Commercially, they are a league and the product is a league, and it shouldn't be looked as 11 separate parts.
And I think something you touched on there, we had Katie Januszewska on last week, who obviously plays at Leicester Riders. Now, them and I'd say London Lions have this, what you'd say is maybe a massive disparity between their men's and women's teams. And you talk rightly so about the women's team working in partnership, but where's the swing on the men's teams working in partnership with the women's? Because you see it happens at Eagles, maybe the Gladiators, Manchester Basketball this season, where they are working hand in hand. Is that something, you guys are able to bang heads with together, or is that where you're supporting the women's teams into the men's?
I think the men's league are very aware of us. That we have an agreement that they provide some services to us in the backroom sort of operations. So all the clubs and all the teams are treated the same way from that point of view. So the governance and all that kind of thing is very much the same. There are very different approaches within the clubs, which is also something that we're trying to sort of get people to either replicate or to understand. So structures can be very different. And this is why it's important to visit all the teams, because it might look on a YouTube stream or from what you hear from someone that have been there that something's not right, but everything else might be. So it might be that Leicester is a good example. So the men are at the Mattioli Arena and the women are at Loughborough, but there's different support mechanisms in that there's a strong university relationship with the women. So you don't sort of want to damage that just to get them playing back to back, for example. So there's lots of different scenarios. There's in fact almost 11 different scenarios with how the relationships are. And where clubs are with their progress and their planning. and what they want it to look like. But I think everyone has the same goal, that it's to be a recognised professional women's sport. I think, and I think now's a good time for us to be striving for something bigger and better.
No, I totally agree. And I think, it's interesting when you look at that. And I mean, I'll just bring it up right now because you mentioned YouTube. So I'm like, there's the line. Because obviously that's something, I'm involved in the comms, Mark's involved in the comms, and people are like, the comms when you go, and interestingly, again, I think it's great because there's obviously a hunger to see games. There's a hunger to see the score, for example, or, be able to watch it on multi-screens. I'd seen you'd posted something a while back and you had like 4 screens going with the basketball and various other sports. And that's where we are as sports people. And I'm like, putting your product out there to people who might pick it up. So people want to see that. So I guess, is that something the league is supporting clubs in? Is there an expectation on teams, or are teams actually just taking it off their own back and producing their own stuff? Where's that?
It is a minimum standard to stream the games. It's also the next step is to get teams away from automated streaming, so that we want operated cameras, and then it's some of the clubs having everyone to do everything a little bit as well, and the technical knowledge and things like that. So funny enough, one of the things that will be mentioned during this international break is to fix having score displays on YouTube, for example. So it's all those little things that could make a massive difference appearances wise. It's quite hard to follow basketball when you've not got an eye on the score. It was I mean, some of the really good stuff doesn't even put a shot clock on, and as a basketball person I'm like going, but do they need to be doing this faster? I don't know what's on the shot clock. So the minimum standards are around game day presentation, and what they're offering sort of social media and comms wise, and sort of getting them to do more of that. We've got a lot of support from Jamie Thomas around comms, and he's very open to assisting them if they need any more knowledge and experience. So they're growing that sort of thing all the time, and it's going back again to the we need to be promoting evenly, if you like, so that we are promoting a league rather than individual franchises as well. So
because that's how you get people watching, because they enjoy one game and they want to see another game, and it rolls off that. And I guess sort of to tie it together, it's like we've got more teams, we've got more teams on the men's side but less games, and last season we had less teams in the men's games and we still had less games. So there's obviously lots going on, and you're working with the clubs individually. And is there more a sort of focus on having the teams in the league to bring in the standards? Because I assume like they know the standards when they come in, but things don't always work they should, and we know there's technical difficulties and stuff. But are you more keen on having more teams in the league with a lower baseline, or would you rather bring up that baseline if it meant losing some teams, for example?
If anyone new wanted to come into the league, they would have to meet the standards. So as I say, the clubs govern themselves from sort of the operating point of view. So they do challenge each other about and sort of it's I do a little bit, I say about examples of good practice and where they are, and sort of facilitating the relationships and things. But any new teams that came in would need to meet our minimum standards or be given a time scale. Yes, you've got half of them there, but we want, it just depends who it is really, and the things that they've got around. We don't want someone. Well, we want someone coming in a good venue, or we want someone coming in that we can assist with the next stage, or they might have a great staff structure and they just need to learn. So there's also, as I say, everyone's different, and I think it's maybe a bit chicken and egg, if that makes sense.
That's what I was sort of meaning. Like, would you want, because obviously it's great, you're like, for one of the first times I know of, more teams in the men's. Yeah. But does that then in a way dilute the product? Or because it's something we've talked about in the podcast before, and people flag these things up and they see scores and different things. So I just thought that would be quite interesting, and
Yeah.
I'm really putting you on the spot with this one. But with the league, I mean, we had that, some people might say, unbeatable strapline last year with the old sort of league setups. Do you think there's a sort of, do you have a strapline this year for the SLBw, or what you would sum it up? I mean, that's really putting you on the spot to think of that in 5 seconds. Or maybe you've already got it. Maybe it was like on your application form. But
no, it's a great question, and now you've said the unbeatable one. I can't. That's all I can.
You can't unhear those. You can't unhear
No,
the trombone. You can't unhear it.
It won't be so much a strapline or a hashtag, but some keywords would be sort of aspiration, goals, achievements, pathways. Even, you know, how can we get more British players to be playing in our domestic competition? So there's lots of targets. We have a business plan with our KPIs in there. So we're one of the things we want to look at is a players group, and last year we introduced an age group competition. So we had an under 12 tournament. So it will be, you know, bringing that back in the spring. Do we bring that back in and replicate an older age group? So there's lots of very aspirational things moving forward, and we sort of want to stand there alongside the men's league and just make the sport the best it can be in the UK.
That, yeah, a hashtag aspirational. And what I was actually going to ask is, we talked about 2022. We know 2026 coming, which is literally on my doorstep. Do you think we'll see a 3x3 mid-season Caitlin Clarke-esque 3x3 tournament? Maybe the club's putting in some teams. Not this season, maybe.
Well, I'll get back to you after my board meeting where I'm putting that forward on Tuesday.
Oh well, there we go.
I've just had some thoughts around what can we do in the gaps in the season. So now was the thing that got me thinking, you know, we've gone into international break. Can we be doing something else, not to detract from GB, but to just try a different thing,
supplement,
to experiment a little bit, you know, and could that look like a 3x3 tournament, for example, or some sort of activity? Can we engage junior players by having 3x3 activity within a game day structure? So would there be something at half time? Could there be something before or after? Yeah, I know 3x3 is a big thing with BBF, and if you know, you never know if there's any funding coming down the track that we could help to support an initiative with. So yeah, there's lots of thinking going on. It's getting things happening. That's the
well, I'm glad that was my first exclusive. And on my second exclusive, is there any info on the cup coming out, just with the men's being drawn at the weekends? And I was ferreting away on the old social media and website last night, and it just said imminent, but that was about a month ago. So I was wondering if you had any.
It was my understanding that it was in a release last week. Yeah, so officially, the cup will be for the women, will be the top 4 will go into semi-finals, right, to produce the 2 finalists for the Nottingham Arena event. The fixtures for the Women's League, we did them last February, and we were put on hold because of our support mechanisms, you know, with the issues with what is now SLB. Some of our support mechanisms weren't there, and so we had our fixtures, but we were on hold, and we'd agreed that we weren't going to have a cup. And then when we've obviously gone with the rebrand, we think it's important to have all the competitions and to bring the cup back. But because we were pre-scheduled, the teams were struggling to get things in and whatever. So we want to engage with the competition, but we've just had to do it a slightly different way this year with a view to bearing it in mind with our fixture scheduling for next time. So yeah, we thought we were onto something being ahead of the game, and it bit us a little bit. So yeah, hopefully we can include a full schedule moving forward.
So is that the top 4 as of, is it like the Christmas break?
December the 31st, done on win percentage.
Okay, there we go. Maybe I missed it, but I'll take it as an exclusive.
Yeah. Well, you got me wondering now, because whether it did go out or not, because it wasn't from me, so I'm just gonna have to check now. But yeah, so it will be win percentage, because obviously not everyone will have played the same amount of games. So yeah, we'll be doing it that way. And then but obviously by Christmas we'll have had our trophy semi-finals as well. So yeah, there's plenty going on.
Lots going on in December, that's for sure. I'll be keeping you busy in that really relaxed Christmas run-up that we all have. Where everyone just puts their feet up, and enjoys the twinkly lights. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'll just be staring at them in a but yeah, so but no, I'm looking forward to going up to watch the GB women on Thursday as well.
Yes,
so,
definitely. It's good to see they've been in at camp. And I guess the last one for me, like I appreciate your time, is 5-year vision. What is your 5-year vision, I guess, for the league?
That's interesting, because I'm guided very much by the board and the clubs.
Okay, yeah.
So in thinking in an aspirational way, it would probably be wanting to see the women's league having consistent engagement and promotion in line with the men's league. And sort of fill in the venues the same as the guys do, playing back to back, TV deals, so it's not just the men's league that's on DAZN, it's the women's league are right there with them as well. We're very conscious that that's down to product as well as engagement, but I think in 5 years that's what we should be aiming for sure.
To go to obviously every venue, where have you been so far this season, and where can we see you in the next few weeks?
I went to Ipswich, who were invited into our trophy competition, and Oakland's. I've been to London and Cardiff. I am Sheffield and Nottingham on a couple of Sundays from now. So it's women's game this week. Leicester Nottingham the week after. Sorry, no, it's not. It's Leicester the week after. Sheffield Nottingham. My one that looks most strange on my schedule is Essex and Glasgow in one weekend. And that is because I'm going to Essex and then I'm going to fly from Heathrow, because believe it or not, I can get to Caledonia from Heathrow for a third of the price of a train ticket. Mm-hmm. So it just seemed the most logical thing to do. Yeah, and then I've got Durham and Newcastle on the 14th of December in one day as well. So yeah, so I'm going to the games, as I say, to get the real true impression of it, because we don't want to just sit there going, well, I didn't see this and I saw that and things, and I think you can really get a feel of it. But I'm sort of coming back with court diagrams and some notes and suggestions and how we might be able to support clubs moving forward, and sharing examples of good practice as well.
Yeah, I like those Durham Newcastle double-header days. They're good days.
Yeah. Will you be there? Are you there on the 14th?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Oh, well, we'll catch up in person then.
Yeah, I just try and snip out of the family Christmas events and.
Yeah.
But no, we both really appreciate your time and coming on to chat to us. It's been fascinating to get to know you a bit better and see kind of your role with the SLBw, and kind of your thoughts on moving forward and things, and how you're supporting the club. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
No, that's all right, and hopefully we can perhaps check in regularly, and I can keep you up to date with what we've got going on and the plans that the clubs want to make to move forward.
Yeah, it'd be wonderful. I think, yeah, there's a real thirst out there, isn't it? People are really interested to hear, which is super positive.
Yeah, and I think there's a role for us to be, going back to #aspirational again. I think there's a role for us to play with the young players as well, and for them to be able to see a pathway here in the UK, because we tend to lose players overseas and seldom see them back. And one of the things I'm enjoying doing is sitting on the performance commission with BBF, and they're starting to look at breaking off into working groups. And I think if we can have a really good look at our pathway for our young people, rather than them just automatically assuming they want to go to the US, I think we can probably make them some really good offers here if we can get everyone aligned. So that would be really interesting.
Yeah, again, thank you so much. Just a shout out to everyone. If you're new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and put a like on this video to being a fascinating one, and we'll see you on the next one.